Kelvik had worked at Galactic Commerce Station 17 for 3 cycles, and in that time, he had learned one fundamental truth. Bureaucracy was the same, soul-crushing nightmare regardless of which species practiced it. As a mid-level administrative coordinator for the Thalvine species, he spent his days mediating disputes over atmospheric preferences and filing reports that nobody would ever read. The station itself was impressive 3 kilometers of rotating sections, housing 473 different species, all pretending they enjoyed each other's company. The Galactic Council called it a prestigious hub of interstellar commerce. Kelvik called it a floating prison with better food options. Everything changed 3 months ago when Riley Park arrived. She was Station 17's first human exchange student, here to study interstellar trade regulations. The moment Kelvik saw her walk into the administration office, he nearly laughed. She stood 1.7 meters tall, tiny compared to most galactic species. Dark hair pulled into a simple ponytail, brown eyes, unremarkable features. She looked like she could be knocked over by a stiff breeze. Nothing about her screamed Deathworlder, but humans were classified as Class 12, the same category as the armored Kravathi and the towering Thoraxians. Earth was a nightmare planet where evolution had spent millions of years trying to kill anything stupid enough to survive there. Gravity 1.3 times galactic standard. Oceans full of predators. Atmospheric storms that could level cities. And their representative was this soft-spoken girl who said please and thank you more than any being Kelvik had ever met. During orientation week, Riley attended every session on time, took meticulous notes, and answered questions with infinite patience. The Arvel students kept trying to touch her hair. The Quantari asked if humans really ate dead animal flesh. She smiled through it, all that same pleasant, unassuming smile that made everyone around her relax. Kelvik watched her navigate the station with calm efficiency, and he thought, Deathworlder, right, and he was Supreme Chancellor of the Galaxy. 3 weeks in, he still believed humans were overrated. That belief lasted exactly until the day Cragson decided Riley looked like easy prey. Cragson was everything Riley was not: massive, aggressive, and thoroughly convinced of his own superiority. The Thoraxian stood 2.4 meters tall, weighed 200 kilograms of muscle and bad attitude, and had bone density capable of surviving orbital re-entry. His species was classified as Category 4 physical threats, the kind you avoided in dark corridors. He had spent 6 weeks terrorizing smaller species on the station, shoulder-checking beings in hallways, looming over people in the cafeteria while making loud comments about their weakness, cornering victims in common areas until they fled in tears. Station security gave him warnings, stern talks from shift commanders, written citations. None of it mattered. Actually, punishing him would require formal charges, witnesses willing to testify, someone brave or stupid enough to go on record against a thorax. Ian. So far, nobody had volunteered. Kelvik had his own theory. Anyone who constantly needed to prove how tough they were was compensating for something. Maybe Cragson was small by Thoraxian standards. Maybe he had failed military selection. Maybe he was just a colossal jerk who enjoyed making others miserable. Whatever his damage, everyone else had to live with it. On day 15 after Riley's arrival, Kelvik was filing yet another pointless report in Common Area 3 when he spotted her by the viewport. She sat at her usual table, reading something on her datapad, completely minding her own business. Then he saw Cragson notice her. The Thoraxian's eyes lit up with that special gleam bullies get when they find fresh prey. He changed direction, moving toward Riley with obvious intent. Part of Kelvik was morbidly curious. Would she run? Would she cry? Would she call security like everyone else? Cragson planted himself directly in front of Riley's table, blocking her viewport. His shadow fell over her like a personal eclipse. He crossed massive arms and stared down with what was supposed to be an intimidating glare. Riley did not look up. She just kept reading, occasionally swiping to the next page. Her expression remained exactly as calm and neutral as always. This was apparently not the response Cragson expected. His mandibles clicked together in irritation. "You," he rumbled, voice carrying across the entire common area. "Human, I am talking to you." Riley turned a page. Did not even glance up. That made him furious. "Did you not hear me, little creature? Or are your species' ears as pathetic as the rest of you?" Riley reached for her tea and took a calm, measured sip. Her hand did not shake. She just drank and went back to reading. Other beings were backing away now, putting distance between themselves and the impending disaster. Cragson snarled, then deliberately slapped Riley's cup off the table. Tea splattered across the floor. "Oops," he said, tone making it clear it was anything but accident. "How clumsy of me." Riley finally looked up. She glanced at the spilled tea, then at Cragson, then back at her datapad. Her expression never changed. Then she went back to reading. The absolute lack of reaction was somehow more insulting than any words could have been. Cragson's face darkened with rage. He grabbed the back of Riley's chair and shoved it hard enough that it scraped loudly against the floor. Riley swayed slightly but kept her balance. Still reading, still calm. "You will show me respect, Deathworlder," Cragson hissed, leaning down close enough that his breath probably disturbed her hair. "Or I will teach you what real strength looks like." Kelvik's antenna twitched nervously. He had seen this pattern before Cragson, escalating until his victim either fled or called for help. But Riley was just sitting there, apparently determined to ignore him into non-existence. It was brave. Foolish, but brave. The common area had gone silent. A Yarvel student grabbed their belongings and practically sprinted for the exit. Two Quantari whispered nervously, their antenna twitching with alarm. Everyone could feel it. This was going to end badly. Riley set down her datapad very carefully, very deliberately. She looked up at Cragson with those calm brown eyes. "Please leave me alone," she said. Her voice was quiet, polite, the same tone she used when asking for directions. Cragson laughed. It was an ugly sound. "Oh, what will you do, tiny creature? What will you do?" Then he grabbed her shoulder with one massive hand and squeezed. That, as it turned out, was a mistake. Kelvik had worked in administration for 3 cycles. He had seen thousands of beings pass through this station, witnessed arguments, fights, breakdowns, and every shade of conflict imaginable. So when he says that something changed in Riley Park at that exact moment, understand that he knows what he is talking about. It was subtle. So subtle that if you were not paying attention, you would miss it entirely. But Kelvik was paying attention. Riley's jaw tightened just slightly, just enough that he could see the muscle flex beneath her skin. Her shoulders, which had been relaxed this entire time, shifted into a different position. Not tense exactly, more like coiled, like a spring being compressed, storing energy. But it was her eyes that really got him. They stopped being soft and polite. They locked onto Cragson with the kind of focus Kelvik had only ever seen in predators. The kind of focus that says, "I am tracking your every movement, calculating every angle, and I already know exactly what you are going to do next." She stood up slowly, carefully removing Cragson's hand from her shoulder with a gentle but firm grip. "I'm going to say this one more time," Riley said, her voice still quiet but carrying a weight it not held before. "Leave me alone. Walk away. This does not have to go any further." It was the most reasonable warning Kelvik had ever heard. It was also, he realized with sudden clarity, a final warning. The kind you give someone right before things go very, very badly for them. Cragson, being the absolute genius he was, laughed in her face. You think you can threaten me, human? He pulled back his fist, massive and brutal, ready to swing. I will show you what happens to those who disrespect their betters. Time did one of those weird things where it seemed to slow down. Kelvin watched that fist start its trajectory toward Riley's face. He watched several beings flinch or look away. He watched Riley's expression remain completely, utterly calm, and he thought, well, those are going to be famous last words. He just was not sure whose dot Riley moved, and Kelvin barely saw it happen. One moment she was standing there, apparently about to get punched into next week by 200 kilograms of angry Thoraxian. The next moment, she was not where Cragson's fist was going anymore. She had shifted just slightly, just enough. His punch sailed past her head, missing by centimeters, and Riley grabbed his extended arm with both hands. What happened next violated several laws of physics Kelvin thought were universal. Riley twisted, using Cragson's own momentum and body weight against him. There was a technique to it, a practiced precision that spoke of training and repetition. Cragson, who had been throwing a punch, suddenly found himself off balance. His weight shifted forward. His arm locked in a position it was definitely not supposed to bend. He went down, not fell, not stumbled, went down hard and fast. His knees hit the floor with a sound like metal striking stone. His face registered shock, confusion, and the beginning of genuine fear. What? He started to say. But Riley had already adjusted her grip dot to his credit. Cragson tried to fight back. He attempted to use his superior size and strength to simply overpower her. Yanking his arm back and reaching for her with his free hand dot, it should have worked. By all logic and reason, a being his size should have been able to toss Riley across the room like luggage. But Riley moved with him, not against him. Every time he pulled, she pushed. Every time he pushed, she redirected dot. It was not a fight. It was a physics lesson dot, and Cragson was failing badly. Within seconds, she had him face down on the floor, one arm twisted behind his back at an angle that made even Kelvin wince. Her knee pressed against his spine. Tap out, she said, her voice still calm, still measured. Just tap the floor, and this is over. Cragson, because he was apparently committed to making the worst possible decisions, roared and tried to buck her off. His muscles strained. His bones creaked. He thrashed like a caught animal, desperate and furious. Riley's expression shifted. The patience drained out of her eyes, replaced by something that looked distinctly like annoyance. The look you get when you have asked someone nicely multiple times and they just will not listen. She adjusted her grip on his arm, repositioned her weight, and applied pressure. The common area was dead silent. Kelvin could hear his own breathing, could hear the hum of the station's environmental systems, could hear Cragson's labored gasps as he struggled. Riley leaned in slightly, her voice dropping to something almost conversational. Last chance, she said. Tap out or I finish this. Cragson's response was another desperate attempt to throw her off. His free hand clawing at the floor, his legs kicking wildly. Riley sighed. Actually sighed. Like this whole situation was just mildly inconvenient and in one smooth, practiced motion. Applied pressure in a direction that Thoraxian necks were definitely not designed to bend. There was a crack that echoed through the entire common area loud. Sharp and absolutely final. Cragson stopped moving. Everything stopped. His body went limp, his eyes wide with shock and pain. He was still breathing. Kelvin could see his chest moving, but everything else had gone completely still. Riley stood up, brushed off her pants, and walked calmly back to her table. She picked up her datapad, glanced at the screen to see where she had left off, and sat back down. Then she went back to reading. The common area was silent, not quiet, silent. The kind of silence that happens when everyone is too shocked to even breathe properly. Station security arrived approximately 45 seconds later, bursting through the doors with weapons drawn, ready for a major incident. They found Cragson lying face down on the floor, still conscious but completely immobilized, and Riley Park sitting at her table reading her datapad like nothing had happened. The security chief, a grizzled Trellin named Vorkus, who had seen everything in his 20-year career, stopped dead in his tracks. He looked at Cragson. He looked at Riley. He looked at the dozen witnesses standing around with expressions of absolute shock. What in the name of the first makers happened here? The medical team arrived 30 seconds behind security. They scanned Cragson quickly, their equipment beeping and chirping with alarming urgency. Severe spinal displacement, one medic reported, voice tight with professional concern. Vertebrae fractured in 3 places. He will survive, but he's going to need extensive reconstructive treatment and at least 2 months in a regeneration pod. Riley stood when Vorkus approached her. She was cooperative, polite, and completely forthcoming. He grabbed me after I asked him multiple times to leave me alone. She explained, her tone the same one she used to discuss trade regulations. I defended myself using appropriate force. The security footage should confirm everything. Vorkus pulled up the footage on his wrist display. Kelvik watched his expression change as he reviewed it. Disbelief, shock, and then something that looked like grudging respect. "Wow," Vorkus said finally. "This is clearly self-defense." Multiple warnings given, physical escalation initiated by the other party. "You are free to go, Miss Park." "Thank you, officer," Riley said. Then she sat back down and returned to her datapad. Kelvik stood there, still processing what he had just witnessed. A human, a soft, small, fragile-looking human, had just casually broken the neck of a Thoraxian. A species classified as a Category 4 physical threat. A being that could go toe-to-toe with military combat units and come out ahead. And Riley had done it with the same energy most beings use to swat an annoying insect. Actually, less energy. She had looked more irritated by the interruption to her reading than by the fight itself. The other beings in the common area were giving her space now. A lot of space. A ridiculous amount of space. There was a 3-meter radius around her table that nobody was willing to cross. Kelvik could not blame them. News travels fast on a space station. News about a human girl snapping a Thoraxian's neck travels at approximately faster than light speed by the time Kelvik finished his shift that day. Every single being on Station 17 had heard about the incident. By the next morning, 3 different versions of the story were circulating, each more dramatic than the last. By the end of the week, someone was claiming Riley had thrown Cragson through a bulkhead, which was physically impossible but made for a better story. Kelvik, however, decided to do something radical. He decided to actually research humans instead of relying on gossip and assumptions. Call it professional curiosity. Call it self-preservation. Call it whatever you want. He accessed the galactic database and started reading about Earth and its inhabitants. What he found was absolutely horrifying. Earth has gravity 1.3 times higher than standard galactic baseline. Humans evolved in that gravity. They grew up in it. Their bones, their muscles, their entire skeletal structure adapted to carrying extra weight every single moment of their lives. When Riley walked around Station 17 at standard gravity, she was essentially in a low-gravity environment. No wonder she moved so fast. She was functionally stronger and quicker than her physiology would normally allow. But it got worse. So much worse. Earth is home to creatures called tigers, bears, crocodiles, sharks, and something called a hippopotamus that apparently kills more humans per year than any of the other predators. Humans are not even the apex predator on their own planet. They are somewhere in the middle of the food chain. which means they evolved having to outsmart, outrun, or outfight things actively trying to eat them. Their muscle density is 0.7 higher than the galactic average. Their bone structure can withstand impacts that would shatter most species' skeletons. Their reaction time is measured in milliseconds. They have redundant systems for almost every major organ. And this is the part that really got Kelvik. They have a stress response called adrenaline that temporarily increases their strength, speed, and pain tolerance when they are threatened. Riley Park was considered small by human standards, even non-threatening. There were humans twice her size, with twice her training walking around. Earth right now. And the galactic community had invited them to join. The collective realization spreading through Station 17 was palpable. Humans were not just technically from a death world. They were actually genuinely, legitimately dangerous, and everyone had been treating them like curiosities. Kelvik ran into Riley 3 days after the incident. He was in the cafeteria trying to enjoy a meal that tasted like recycled packaging material when she walked in. The entire room went quiet. Conversation stopped mid-sentence. Beings who had been moving toward the food dispensers suddenly decided they were not hungry anymore. Riley, completely oblivious or just not caring, grabbed a tray and got in line. She selected something that looked like it might have been vegetables at some point, found a table by the window, and sat down to eat alone. Very alone. The nearest occupied table was a good 6 meters away. She was back to her usual self, polite, pleasant, completely non-threatening in appearance. She ate her lunch while reading something on her datapad, occasionally taking sips from a cup of that tea. She seemed to favor everything about her screamed harmless student just trying to get through her day. But Kelvik knew better now. Everyone knew better now. That calm demeanor was not weakness. It was restraint. It was control. It was a Death Worlder making the conscious choice not to be dangerous, which somehow made her more terrifying than if she had been openly aggressive. Cragson had been loud and obvious about his threat level. Riley was quiet about hers, right up until the moment she decided not to be. 2 weeks after the incident, Station Command called an emergency assembly. Every department head, every security officer, every administrative coordinator was required to attend. Kelvik filed into the main conference hall with hundreds of other beings, all of them buzzing with speculation. What nobody expected was to see Riley Park standing at the front of the room alongside Commander Thexis, the station's Kravathi administrator. Thexis was an imposing figure-armored exoskeleton, mandibles that could cut through steel, claws that had seen combat in 3 different sector wars. He stood at the podium with an expression that suggested he was not happy about what he was about to say. 3 weeks ago, Thexis began, his voice amplified through the hall's audio system. We had an incident involving a human exchange student and a Thoraxian resident. Many of you have heard various versions of what happened. Today, you will hear the truth. The hall went silent. For 6 weeks prior to that incident, Cragson of Thorax Prime engaged in systematic harassment and intimidation of smaller species on this station. He received 17 separate warnings from security. 17. And we did nothing meaningful to stop him because we were afraid of filing formal charges against a Category 4 threat species. Thexis paused, letting that sink in. Then he made the mistake of targeting Riley Park, a human, a Class 12 Deathworld species that we, in our ignorance, had dismissed as harmless because she is polite and small and does not advertise her capabilities. The commander pulled up the security footage on the massive display screen behind him. Kelvik watched the entire confrontation play out again. Cragson's aggression, Riley's warnings, the final physical assault, and then that devastating, precise counterattack that left a Thoraxian immobilized on the floor. This, Thexis said, gesturing to the screen, is what happens when we allow bullies to operate unchecked. This is what happens when we assume that being polite means being weak. And this is what happens when we forget that humans come from a planet that spent 4 billion years trying to kill them. He turned to Riley, who stood beside him with that same calm expression she always wore. Miss Park showed remarkable restraint. She gave multiple warnings. She used only the force necessary to end the threat. And she did so while adhering to every single protocol for self-defense outlined in station regulations. Cragson, on the other hand, violated at least a dozen codes of conduct and assaulted a fellow resident without provocation. Thaxis's mandibles clicked together with finality. Effective immediately, Cragson's residency has been revoked. Upon completion of his medical treatment, he will be deported to Thorax Prime with a permanent ban from all Galactic Council stations. Additionally, we are implementing new anti-harassment protocols with actual enforcement mechanisms. If you terrorize other beings on this station, you will be removed. Period. The hall erupted in a mixture of applause and nervous chatter. Kelvik found himself clapping along with everyone else, watching as Riley gave a small nod of acknowledgement and then quietly left the stage. She did not gloat. She did not make speeches. She just went back to being Riley Park, exchange student, who wanted to study trade regulations in peace. But everyone in that hall knew the truth. Now, humans were not to be underestimated. Ever. 3 months later, Kelvik was filing reports in his office when Riley stopped by. She had a datapad in hand and that familiar pleasant expression on her face. "Excuse me, Kelvik, do you have a moment?" He nearly jumped out of his seat. Even now, knowing she had no reason to hurt him, his instincts screamed danger every time she entered a room. "Of course, Miss Park. What can I do for you?" "I am finishing my exchange program next week," she said, setting the datapad on his desk. "I wanted to thank you for your assistance during my time here. Also, I have been asked to provide feedback on the new anti-harassment protocols. They are working well. Incidents are down 73%. Kelvik glanced at the data. It was true. Since Riley had broken Cragson's neck and the station had implemented real consequences for bullying, the entire atmosphere had changed. Smaller species no longer walked the corridors in fear. The cafeteria was no longer segregated by threat level. People actually talked to each other. One human girl had done what 3 cycles of security warnings could not. "That is excellent news," Kelvik said carefully. "And where will you go after you leave us?" Riley smiled. "Back to Earth for a semester. Then I have been accepted to the Galactic Council's diplomatic training program. Apparently, they think humans would make good mediators." Kelvik almost laughed. Mediators, right. Mediators who could snap your neck if negotiations broke down. Actually, that might be the most effective diplomatic strategy the Council had ever devised. "Congratulations," he said, and meant it. "You will do well." After Riley left, Kelvik sat at his desk and thought about the past few months. He thought about how everyone had underestimated her, how they had mistaken kindness for weakness, restraint for inability. Humans had joined the galactic community just 2 years ago, and already they were changing things. Not through aggression or intimidation, but through sheer, undeniable competence. Through the simple act of refusing to be victims. Riley Park had not wanted to hurt anyone. She had given Cragson every possible chance to walk away. But when forced to defend herself, she had done so with devastating efficiency. And then gone. Right back to reading her datapad like it was just another Tuesday. That was the truly terrifying part. The calm, the control. The absolute confidence that came from knowing exactly what you were capable of. Kelvik pulled up his species threat assessment protocols and made one final update to the human. Entry. Classification. Class 12 Deathworld species. Gravity-adapted physiology. Enhanced strength, speed, and durability at standard galactic baseline. Stress-induced performance enhancement via adrenaline response. Highly adaptable. Highly intelligent. Extreme restraint until provoked. Threat level. Variable. Ranges from negligible to catastrophic depending on circumstances. Recommended approach. Treat with respect. Do not mistake politeness for weakness. Do not threaten. Do not assault. Under no circumstances should you interrupt a human while they are reading. He saved the file and leaned back in his chair, a small smile crossing his face. Welcome to the galaxy, humanity. The universe had not gotten a new member species. The universe had gotten a wake-up call, delivered by a 1.7-meter tall girl who just wanted to study trade regulations in peace. And honestly, after 3 cycles of dealing with beings like Kragson, Kelvik was starting to think the galaxy was better for it. Humans endure. Humans adapt. And when pushed far enough, humans remind you exactly why they survived their death world in the first place. The lesson had been learned. Station 17 would not forget it. Neither would anyone else.